What do you think is the future of the construction industry in general? Design and construction, there is a lot of technology, there is 3D printing, there is BIM technology, virtual reality, there are a lot of things that are buzzwords in the construction industry. How do you see the design and construction industry evolving in the future?
I think the biggest thing I would like to see is actually building buildings from a 3D model. The fact that we are still making 2D drawings is really kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
And there's a lot of coordination issues between that because we're bringing these young folks into our industry and they live and breathe in 3D. And then we're trying to back train them on how to communicate in 2D, which is kind of against the future.
Sure.
So I think the biggest change is going to be us actually being able to construct off of our 3D models. Now, if virtual reality is part of that, that'd be phenomenal. But I think that that's unfortunately very far away. I would like to kind of be the leader of that maybe someday, but we got to get the contractors and the owners on board. And part of what I do is I sit in front of the people that we can make a change with. It's like getting in front of the right people for them to realize that they can lead the change. And part of that is persuasion and passion, right? And what I'm passionate about is actually not having to train everyone back to 2D.
Yeah.
So I am sitting in front of owners, developers, and I'm like, you can do this. You can be the leader of the change.
That's right.
And I traveled all over the world actually last year, kind of communicating that to some of the top leaders in the industry that can lead that. And they have the why nots, a lot of why nots. And I love to challenge them.
Yeah.
So I'm on the lookout for that first project where we can actually do that.
Sure.
But that's the change is I think structural engineers actually have a voice.
Yeah.
Now we were kind of just in the background. We were brought in late before, and now we're kind of challenging that. We're saying, hey, we know the owners, we're talking to the contractors, we're talking to the whole team because we know how to communicate. And I think that that's going to be a huge change. Again, like I said earlier, technology could take our jobs, right?
Yep.
And so if we can have that human connection, that's really what we're going to be selling in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think the breakthrough on your perspective is when you really start understanding structural engineering as the bones, and the architecture might be the skin and everything you see, but without the bones, you're nothing. But if you start understanding the bones as the design piece of it, and when you can prove you can use certain kind of cantilevers or gymnastics, and then you wrap it in pretty finishes, that's a powerful project right there.
Yeah.
But the structural engineering will be the origin of that. It's not an answer to the architect. Is the design premise, and you work with the other design professionals to make it better.
It's so much more collaboration than we ever have done, obviously, as structural engineers. I mean, through my 17 years, I wasn't even at the table at kickoff meetings, and now we are. And that's kind of pushing for us to be a part of that collaboration from the very beginning with the CM, with the architect, with the MEP, all of them, and just sit at a table.
It makes sense even from a financial standpoint, because foundation is expensive, excavation is expensive, structure is expensive. And when you can be at the table providing feedback, understanding ideas, you can really guide not only the design experience, but also the financial performance of the projects.
And I think historically, we weren't at the table because we didn't know how to collaborate. Structural engineers would be at the table and they'd say, no, we can't do that. And the architect would just kind of cringe.
Sure.
And so there was this history of structural engineers not having that ability to communicate.
Yeah.
And so architects were like, okay, let's just not bring them in. So we were kind of scarred of years of doing that.
I know. Well, I feel that as an architect, like my vision of structural engineers in general is that they're going to over-engineer everything by like 50 times because they're scared of their design is not going to work. So it's going to be very expensive. So everything is possible, but they're going to make it very expensive.
Right. Being able to communicate what you really can do versus what you can afford is very important.
Yeah.
And making sure that the architect feels like their design is being supported and heard.
Sure.
That's talent. So